Let me tell y'all like this, you know what I'm saying? Trillville is the newest and crunkest group ever. You better believe it, baby.
Trillville, Atlanta, Georgia rap group featuring Don P, Lil LA, and Dirty Mouth. Crunk music. No matter how you feel about its memory, you can't deny it was a fun era in hip-hop that spawned many other subgenres that came to follow, like trap music, snap music, and even drill music, which can be seen as trap music, just centered and based initially in Chicago. But it was crunk music back in the early 90s, 3-6 Mafia, Tear the Club Up, late 90s and mainly early 2000s that brought an energy to hip-hop that made you want to release all tension and just be free and have fun, instead of off in the corner looking cool or woke to music like Jay-Z or Nas playing in the club. What made crunk music most special is it gave a lane to all rap artists instead of only the ones with superior skills, high vocabulary, a too cool for school persona, complete with gold chains, watches, and the most expensive cars, or from the East or West Coast. It was the South's rebellion and cry to be heard and respected. When crunk music was introduced, it wasn't about who dressed the flyest, who had on the shiniest suits and Versace linens, or who knew the most about the origins of black people and playing race politics. Crunk was simply come as you are and turn up, have fun at all costs, throwing the rule book away and breaking a sweat. It allowed hip-hop to breathe and not be so uptight and concerned with what rapper was beefing with who had the best album with no skips, the best MC, lyrics, or any of that. In a crunk environment, nobody cared. Just be loud, move your body, and enjoy the moment. Its greatest strength was arguably its demise at the same time. Because it wasn't technical, because it was outlandish, and because it didn't spread to places outside the South with the same effect, it encapsulated itself into a time period that no longer exists. A part of me though still believes crunk music can make a comeback if it finds another personality like Lil Jon, who embodied everything just mentioned about crunk music's popularity, to head the new charge. Lil Jon didn't care about any of the social acceptances, he was just his country self and seemed a fun person to be around that didn't place pressure on you to mask who you really were. People like that are always popular. One of his creations at the time was a group from Atlanta called Trillville, who blew up in the mid-90s under the tutelage of Lil Jon with their 2004 hit song Never Ever. They released their debut album in tandem with Lil Scrappy, also a Lil Jon artist, and it went gold and delivered many hits at the time like Some Cut, Never Ever, and Scrappy's No Problem. They were supposed to be the future of crunk music, but died off too soon after just one album in their peak. What happened? Let's talk about it. It's your boy JC, Stunt and Growth Music.
Grill, dog. Show the grill. Yeah, I think that.
Take a minute to like, subscribe, and comment on who I should do next. Trillville is a trio rap group from Atlanta, Georgia that met each other in high school through music and friends who did music connecting the pieces. LA and Don P actually knew each other since elementary school. While Don P was making beats on his keyboard, Dirty Mouth played in the school marching band on the drums, and Lil LA was working on being a promoter. They initially began as solo artists with Trillville, really a record label formed by Don P, to which he wanted to produce artists, but saw the opportunity to become a rapper and taught himself the craft. It wasn't difficult because, as mentioned, crunk music was accepting of everyone as long as you made a good hype song. They got with BME and Lil Jon after being discovered at a talent show, and BME decided the best way of all being able to come out was to form a group. Trillville became that, releasing the platinum second single Some Cut that went platinum, and the rest was history. Stunt number 1, leaving Lil Jon and BME. The first question asked when Trillville is brought up is why didn't they release another album with BME and Lil Jon after having so much success on their first album that went gold and had 2 hits in Never Ever and Some Cut. But as Trillville explains it themselves, those were hectic times for everyone involved, especially Lil Jon, who was by then a successful artist on his own, on a trajectory to working with some of the biggest artists in the game, still not quite at his charting peak. As Don P recalls, Lil Jon was a really busy artist himself, acting in a CEO role that naturally wasn't his strong suit. He wasn't the managing artist type, and also he was already accomplished and the hottest thing going at the time, so was in position to move away from projects if he felt they were too much to deal with at the time. Because of this, there wasn't much attention paid to all the artists on BME. Most of them never even released and have been with Lil Jon since day one. Jon, of course, produced Trillville's entire first album, even adding their famous bed squeaking sound to some cut, which Lil Jon recalled being a chair he was sitting and rocking during a studio session and encouraged to put the sound in the beat. Don P and Trillville recalls it being actual sounds from Dirty Mouth doing, well, the dirty and recording himself. Either way, Lil Jon and Trillville were a glove-fitting duo, and them not having him as a producer on any more of their albums showed in result. Again, Crunk music wasn't about being the best lyricist or most technical, so surviving off everything else without the face of Crunk music, Lil Jon, was difficult. Along with being the face of Crunk that gave an artist instant credibility in the subgenre and instant notoriety behind their music, Lil Jon was actually a legendary producer equally as talented as the songs he wrote. When Trillville left BME early 2008 and decided to embark on their own journey, they left the one-of-a-kind sound and effect of a Lil Jon and were unable to recreate that on their own. You can almost say they were forced out by then, as Jon had crossed over to Snap Music and Trillville were still on the Crunk wave. Stunt number 2, going separate ways. As with all hip-hop groups, we've come to expect them to split at some point, and Trillville weren't any different. Because they weren't getting priority release on BME after their debut album that was a success, mainly due to all the artists the label were juggling and also Lil Jon becoming more and more busy after deciding to cross over into Snap Music in the mid-2000s. First, Dirty Mouth left the group in 2007 to pursue a solo deal with Universal under his new name J-Mal, leaving Lil LA and Don P to release their sophomore album as a duo the summer 2008. Not only did he leave, but he released a diss track to the members, mainly Don P, on his first mixtape since he left called Still Trill Without the Ville, where he asked the question, what the f is a Don P? The solo career nor the diss went much further and certainly never amounted to him becoming a star. Becoming a star was an issue that they all faced, as Trillville the group never really had one to begin with. Don P was always a producer at heart and went on to produce and work with major artists like Kendrick Lamar, Gucci Mane, and more, while Lil LA was always the quiet one, more in the background or an afterthought, certainly without the personality of a star even on his own team, and Dirty Mouth had the personality of sorts, just not the skills or the look that would lead to success on his own. Together, they bounced ideas and made a dope debut album, carried mainly by the light on Crunk music and anything Lil Jon touched at the time. Same with their album made Lil Scrappy. After Lil Jon, he too fell off. Whenever artists go their separate ways, one thing they better have is star power, and Trillville members individually didn't have what it took. Stunt number 3, the death of Crunk music. Lastly, Trillville was also a victim of new eras coming along and replacing Crunk music, like Snap Music that was just as popular, except it incorporated a dance move to the hit songs that appealed now to a younger audience that wanted not just to jump up and down, scream and push, but they wanted to get crunk by dancing, and therefore Snap Music was great. But Trillville weren't dancers, were they? Well, I guess for them, that meant being left behind as the culture shifted. One thing Crunk music still allowed you to do was keep your street cred and angry faces on camera, still seeming like a tough guy and more serious. Snap music wasn't for that type of guy, which is why it was embraced mainly by the younger generation under 21 years old and produced an artist like Soulja Boy, who, like Lil Jon, became one of the faces of Snap music for a while. Snap music died as well when trap music became popular and more serious. Then drill music took that to another level, introducing authentic violence over hyped beats instead of partying and dancing. In those eras, Trillville had no place. They weren't street gangsters and they weren't dancers or killers. They were former band members and producers that did music all day. So when Crunk died, their career did too. They managed to release a few more independent albums with the return of Dirty Mouth, but nothing stuck and their popularity was over. All in all, Trillville was a group that made a few fun songs. They weren't expected to be the face of hip-hop or crunk music, but I do think with Lil Jon sticking by their side, they would have had more significance. Unfortunately, that didn't happen, and for these reasons, their growth was stunted. Salute, much respect, it's your boy JC Stunted Growth Music, and I'm out.